My husband thought I was too exhausted from 12-hour nursing shifts to notice his late nights. He thought I was too busy raising our toddler to realize he spent $23,000 of our savings on a secret apartment for his ex. So when her intimate text lit up his phone while he was singing in the shower, I didn't cry or scream. I simply typed a reply and invited her over to our house. Welcome back to Calm Revenge Stories, where the sweetest justice is always served ice cold. An arrogant salesman believes he can fund a double life without consequence. But he severely underestimates his quiet, meticulous wife. Watch as an isolated new mother systematically dismantles her husband's perfect facade, turning his own arrogance against him until his entire world completely shatters. But before the ultimate reckoning, the destruction always begins with a single, careless mistake. At 9:47 on a quiet Thursday night, the master bathroom shower was running. A harsh hissing spray hit the ceramic tiles of our master shower. Over that noise, the sudden vibration of a phone buzzing against the oak nightstand sounded like a drill. I was folding Tyler's laundry. My hands froze on a faded grey shirt. His screen lit up the darkened bedroom. I did not mean to look. I only turned my head because the sudden glare cut through the shadows. Miss your eyes. When can I see you? A kiss emoji sat at the end of the text. The sender was just the letter B. My jaw locked. I pressed my thumb so hard into the fabric of the shirt that my knuckle ached. A single letter for the woman texting my husband at 9:47 on a Thursday night. I am 28 years old. I spend 12 hours a day running the intensive care unit at a Portland hospital. I keep people breathing when their bodies want to stop. I do not panic. I react. I dropped the shirt. The shower kept running. Tyler was singing. He was actually singing some pop song out of tune over the rush of water. I picked up his phone. He never changed his passcode. It was still the date our daughter Ellie was born 18 months ago. He kept it that way because he believed I was too tired and too buried in diapers to ever check. I opened the message. Not just miss you. Specific. Intimate. I scrolled up. 3 months of messages. Pictures of a white hotel bed with the caption saying it was still warm. Pictures of Tyler at his desk. And then I saw a message Tyler sent 6 weeks ago, right around the time I switched to day shifts to be home more with Ellie. She does not suspect anything. She is too tired. He was using the exhaustion of raising his child as a shield. I did not cry. My hands were perfectly steady. I tapped the keyboard and typed a reply pretending to be him. Me too, babe. Come over tonight. She is out. Door is unlocked. I hit send. Then I deleted my reply from the thread so he would not see it. I placed the phone exactly where I found it and placed it face down. 30 seconds later, the screen lit up again. On my way. 15 min. I stood up. The water stopped. The bathroom door clicked open and released a cloud of damp steam smelling of cedar. Tyler stepped out with a white towel low on his hips and a wet, boyish grin on his face. Hey, babe, he said while rubbing his hair with a second towel. Ellie, down. Yeah, I said. My voice sounded exactly like it always did. She is down. 14 minutes left. We sat in the living room. Tyler rested on the sofa watching a sports game and wearing his old college sweatpants. His hair was still damp at the edges. I sat in the armchair opposite him. I held a mug of chamomile tea. The ceramic burned my palms, but I did not put it down. I stared at the open pages of a paperback book. I had not read a single word. The house was perfectly quiet except for the low murmur of the television announcer. The doorbell rang. A sharp electronic chime echoed through the hallway. Tyler frowned and glanced at the digital clock on the cable box. Who rings a bell at 10 at night? I did not blink. I did not move. I just took a slow sip of my tea. Tyler stood up and tossed his phone onto the cushion. He walked to the foyer and pulled the door open. A woman stood on our porch. Blonde hair fell in loose waves over a leather jacket. She wore low-heeled boots. She had a bright and expectant smile that completely vanished the second she registered Tyler, standing there in ragged sweatpants, instead of waiting for her in the bedroom. Then her eyes shifted past his shoulder. She saw me, sitting on the couch, holding my tea. "Come in, Brooke," I said. My voice was the low and steady tone I used to tell a family their loved one was coding. "I am the one who texted you." Silence stretched tight enough to snap. Tyler turned around. I watched his face. I expected guilt. I expected fear. Instead, I saw a machine booting up. His eyes went flat and calculating as he processed the collision of his two worlds. Then he launched his first attack. "Riley, what the hell?" he said with his voice rising and thick with manufactured outrage. "You went through my phone." I set the mug down on the coffee table. The glass made a dull clink. "Your former girlfriend is standing in our doorway at 10 at night because she thought she was coming over to sleep with you, and your first sentence is about my phone." Brooke took a step back. Her knuckles were white where she gripped her leather purse. Right then, the porch light caught the metal at her throat. A delicate silver chain. A round pendant from Tiffany. I recognized it instantly. I bought it for Tyler for our first anniversary. 2 letters representing us. He told me 3 months ago he lost it in the locker room at his gym. He had my letter shaved off and re-engraved into a B. $400 from our joint account hanging right in front of me. "Tyler, I am leaving," Brooke stammered, and turned toward the driveway. "Brooke, wait," Tyler snapped. She spun around and pulled her purse hard against her hip. When she did, the zipper snagged. Something metallic clattered onto the hardwood floor of the foyer. Brooke did not stop to pick it up. She practically ran to her car. Tyler slammed the front door shut. He took a deep breath and turned back to me. He raised his hands in a gesture of surrender. His voice completely shifted. It was soft now and coated in fake concern. "Baby, listen to me. That was nothing. She has been texting me, and I did not want to worry you. I was handling it." I stood up from the armchair. I walked over to the front door. Tyler stepped back and made room for me. I bent down and picked up the object Brooke had dropped. It was a brass key attached to a cheap plastic tag. I held it up. The tag read, "Unit 4B, Columbia Tower." Was this part of handling it? I asked. Tyler stared at the plastic tag. For the first time all night, his mouth opened, but no words came out. He had no script for the key. I walked past him and headed for the stairs. The plastic dug sharply into the pad of my thumb. He followed me up to the master bedroom. For 3 straight hours, the air in that room felt thick and suffocating. Ellie slept in the nursery right next door. She was separated from us only by drywall and the humming sound of the ocean waves from her sound machine. Tyler paced at the foot of the bed. He threw every tactic he had at me. First came the denial. "She is delusional, Riley. She texts me. I do not respond. Check my phone because the replies are not there." He did not know I deleted the bait I sent. To his eyes, the conversation probably did look like it mostly came from her end. But I had read the months of messages before that. Then came the attack. He stopped pacing and pointed a finger at me. "You set up my ex to come to our house, while our daughter is sleeping just down the hall. What kind of mother does that?" My stomach tightened. That phrase dug deep. I strive for perfection. I sacrifice everything to be a good mother. For a split second, a heavy wave of guilt threatened to pull me under. Did I put my child in danger by inviting a stranger here? Then Tyler dropped to his knees next to the bed. The final act. He buried his face in his hands and his shoulders shook. "I am trying so hard, Riley. I go to work and I come home and I help with Ellie. And you set me up like this. Do you know how that feels?" I almost nodded. 3 times before in our marriage I caught him in a lie, and 3 times he cried exactly like this and I folded. But tonight my fingers were curled tight in my lap and wrapped around that plastic tag. Unit 4B. "Then, what is Unit 4B, Tyler?" I asked quietly. Tyler stopped shaking. He lifted his head. His cheeks were completely dry. The tears were never real. I did not say another word. I grabbed a spare blanket and a pillow from the closet. I walked downstairs to the living room. I lay on the sofa in the dark. I changed the passcode on my phone to my own face. Then I spent the next hour pulling up the screenshots I had emailed to myself from his device. Evidence. Backups. Because I know how to document a failing system. The kitchen smelled like stale coffee when I walked in at 6:30 the next morning. Tyler had already left for work 3 hours early. He was hiding. He left a pale yellow sticky note perfectly centered on the kitchen island. "I love you. We will figure this out tonight." A little drawn heart sat right next to his initial. I read the note while snapping Ellie into her high chair. She banged her plastic spoon against the tray and giggled as a handful of dry oat cereal spilled onto the floor. My hands shook, not from fear but from the massive crash of adrenaline leaving my system. My coffee sat untouched on the counter and turned cold. I stared at his familiar handwriting. He had written similar notes when I was pregnant. He wrote them when he bought me flowers. The exact same handwriting typed to text, saying I was too tired to notice his betrayal. Ellie reached her sticky hands toward me. "Mama," she babbled with a partially chewed piece of cereal stuck to her chin. I looked at her, 18 months old. If I stayed, she would grow up in this house watching me endure exactly what my mother endured. She would learn that love means swallowing poison and smiling. If I left, she would learn how to choose herself. I pulled my phone from my scrub pocket. I opened a browser and typed a search for a divorce attorney in Portland. My thumb hovered over the backspace key. The old instinct to hide and to smooth things over screamed at me to delete the search history. Tyler did not check my phone. He did not think I possessed the energy to fight him. I pressed search. I did not delete a thing. The weekend dragged on like a slow poison. Tyler cooked dinner on Friday. He bought a bouquet of pink peonies on Saturday. He spent Sunday rolling around on the living room rug with Ellie while making her laugh. I accepted the flowers. I smiled at his cooking. Then I locked myself in the bathroom and vomited until my throat burned. Monday morning finally arrived. The intensive care unit was loud with alarms and the hum of ventilators. The bright fluorescent lights overhead felt like ice. I walked into the staff break room. I just wanted black coffee and 5 minutes of silence. Marin Cole was sitting at the small round table. She wore her purple hospital scrubs and her battered nursing shoes. Marin had been a nurse for almost 2 decades. She went through a brutal divorce 3 years ago. She took one look at my face and set her coffee mug down. "You look exactly like I did about 3 weeks before I filed my papers," Marin said. Her voice was scratchy and direct. "Sit down." I sat. I told her the facts. I kept my voice steady and clinical like I was giving a patient report at shift change. I told her about the text message. I told her about the blonde woman at the door. I told her about the plastic key tag. Marin did not interrupt once. "Okay," Marin said when I finished. "First thing is you do not confront him again. You already showed your hand once. Now you build." She reached into her canvas tote bag and pulled out a small white rectangle. She slid it across the table. It was a business card. The name Gina Chen was printed in sharp black letters. "Gina helped me," Marin told me. "She is not cheap, but she does free consultations for nurses. Tell her Marin sent you." Marin leaned forward and lowered her voice. "My ex-husband convinced everyone I was losing my mind. I lost custody of my son for 18 months because I did not document a single thing. I had the truth, Riley, but truth without paper is just a sad story someone tells at a bar." I picked up the business card. It was the smallest object in the room, but it felt heavier than a brick. 2 days later, I used my lunch break to drive downtown. The Columbia Tower was a tall building with a glass lobby and a row of polished brass mailboxes. My chest felt tight. I rode the elevator to the 4th floor. The hallway smelled like expensive room freshener. I stopped in front of a heavy wooden door. A small brass plaque read 4B. My hand shook as I slid the key into the lock. The metal turned with a soft click. I pushed the door open. The studio apartment was flooded with afternoon sunlight. The bed in the corner was covered in crisp white sheets. Those were the exact same sheets from the picture Brooke sent to Tyler. I walked toward the small kitchen area. A photograph was pinned to the refrigerator. It was Tyler and Brooke. They were smiling and his arm was wrapped tight around her waist. The background was the famous public market in Seattle. Tyler told me he was in Seattle last week for a team-building retreat. I opened the top drawer of the kitchen counter. It was a habit from the hospital to always check supply drawers. A thick stack of stapled paper lay inside. A residential lease agreement. The tenant name was Tyler Prescott. The monthly rent was $1,850. The term was for 6 months. The payment source listed at the bottom was a checking account ending in 4471, our joint savings account. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I opened my banking application. I never checked that account because Tyler always handled our long-term finances. I scrolled through the transaction history. Last month showed a transfer of $1,850 to Columbia Property Management. The month before showed the exact same transfer. 6 months of consecutive payments. I did the math in my head. $11,100 in rent, another $1,800 for the deposit, $400 for the silver necklace, the expensive dinners, the fake work trip to Seattle. Tyler had spent over $23,000. That money was supposed to be the down payment for a house with a yard for Ellie. That money was the reason I gave up my premium night shift pay. It was the reason I stopped buying new clothes. I sacrificed my sleep and my time with my daughter so my husband could rent a secret apartment for another woman. I took photographs of the lease. I took pictures of the banking statements on my screen. I photographed the Seattle picture and the 2 blue toothbrushes sitting side by side in the bathroom glass. I locked the door behind me and walked back to my car. I sat in the dark parking garage with my hands gripping the steering wheel. I finally cried. I did not cry over the affair. I cried for my stolen time. I wept for the 18 months of exhaustion that he exploited. The next afternoon I sat in a leather chair across from Gina Chen. The lawyer was a sharp woman in her 40s, with piercing dark eyes. She reviewed the printed photographs and the bank statements I brought in a manila folder. Oregon is a no-fault state, Gina explained while tapping her pen on the lease agreement. The affair itself will not change how assets are divided. But this right here is a clear dissipation of marital assets. He spent marital funds on an extramarital relationship, $23,000 in 6 months. In a short marriage with a toddler, Gina told me the court would force Tyler to reimburse the marital estate. She told me the state allowed one-party consent for recording conversations. I had the legal right to record him inside my own home without telling him. She mapped out a plan. I was the primary caregiver. Ellie was under 2 years old. The court would favor stability for her. I walked out of the law office holding a thick file of paperwork. I sat in my car and set the folder on the passenger seat. For the very first time since the text message, I felt powerful. I had evidence. I had a brilliant lawyer. Tyler was going to lose everything. Then I adjusted the rearview mirror before starting the engine. I caught my own reflection. My eyes were red at the rims and shadowed with dark purple circles. The expression looking back at me was purely defensive. I looked exactly like my mother. I possessed the same hardened determination to survive a betrayal. I was building a fortress of legal documents just to prove I was not crazy. But who was I beneath the anger? Who was Riley without Tyler? I shoved the question away and put the car in drive. Tyler found out I visited the apartment. Brooke must have noticed something moved out of place. She called him. He checked the banking application and saw my device login history. He came home that evening and walked straight into the kitchen. I was standing at the counter slicing a banana into tiny pieces for Ellie. She was babbling in her high chair. Tyler stood in the doorway. He planted both hands firmly on the granite island. The fake smiles and the concerned looks were completely gone. His face was a mask of cold stone. "You went to the apartment," he said. It was not a question. I did not turn around. I kept my eyes on the cutting board. "Which apartment?" "The one you are paying for with our daughter's college fund." His voice dropped an octave. It was the low and level tone he used when closing a hostile business deal. "You need to be very careful, Riley. Very careful about what you do next." My fingers tightened around the handle of the paring knife. The blade bit slightly into my skin. Ellie stopped chewing her banana and stared wide-eyed at her father. The silence in the kitchen was heavy and toxic. Or what I asked, Tyler did not answer. He turned and walked upstairs. 15 minutes later, I heard the faint murmur of his voice through the floorboards. He was making a phone call. I could only make out 2 words. Her mother. My mother arrived on Saturday morning. Connie drove 2 straight hours from Eugene. Her eyes were puffy and red. She practically collapsed into my arms the moment I opened the front door. Tyler called me, she whispered while squeezing my shoulders. We sat on the living room sofa. My mother kept her coat on like she needed the extra layer for armor. Tyler had called her the night before. He painted a masterful picture of a husband desperately worried about his wife. He told her I was suffering from severe issues adjusting to motherhood. He claimed I was paranoid and imagining affairs. He told her I lured an innocent woman to the house while my baby slept. He cried on the phone with her. Honey, I know it feels real to you, my mother said while stroking my knuckles, but Tyler loves you so much. He called me sobbing. Men do not cry like that unless they are terrified of losing their family. I pulled my hands away. Men do not cry like that unless they are scared of getting caught, Mom. She flinched and looked away. Riley, please. Every marriage has storms. You just have to weather them. Your father and I went through rough patches. You and Dad, I repeated. The words tasted like ash. Right. She was sitting on my sofa 30 years after sitting on her own sofa with a cheating husband. She was repeating the exact same script her mother probably gave to her, the endless generational loop of women swallowing their pride to keep the peace. Mom, I have evidence, I said softly. I have text messages. He rented an apartment. I have bank records. He took $23,000 from our savings. The color drained from my mother's face. It was not a look of shock. It was a look of pure and terrifying recognition. How much? She asked. Her voice cracked. 23,000. My mother stared down at her lap. Her hands began to tremble. Your father spent $8,000. It was 1997. I found the hotel receipts hidden in his golf bag. She swallowed hard. I put them back in the drawer. The floor beneath me felt like it was tilting. I always knew my father cheated. I never knew my mother possessed the physical proof and actively chose to ignore it. She held the evidence in her hands and put it away. Tyler asked me to help him, my mother whispered into the quiet room. He wants me to talk sense into you. He said if you file for divorce, he will fight for full custody of Ellie. He said he has deep concerns about your mental stability. The air vanished from my lungs. Tyler was using my own mother to deliver a nuclear threat. He knew I feared losing my daughter more than I feared death. I looked at the woman sitting next to me. She was the person who was supposed to protect me. Instead, she was the messenger for my abuser. She put the receipts back in the drawer 30 years ago. Now she was asking me to do the same. By Monday morning, Tyler shifted his strategy into full isolation. I went to the grocery store to buy milk for Ellie. My debit card was declined at the register. The cashier gave me a pitying look as I dug through my purse for cash. I checked my phone in the parking lot. Tyler had cancelled my secondary credit card under the guise of security concerns. The joint account was still open, but he had diverted his latest paycheck entirely into a private account. Then the text messages started arriving. 2 separate mutual friends messaged me within an hour. They said Tyler told them I was going through a really dark time. They sent heart emojis and offered to bring over casseroles. Nobody asked for my side of the story. Tyler was building a fortress around himself and trapping me outside the walls. He even offered couples counseling, but only with a therapist who happened to be his old college brother. When I refused, Tyler shook his head and looked at me with deep sorrow. See, he said, you do not even want to fix our family. I stood in the kitchen that night watching the dishwasher run through its cycle. The glowing numbers on the appliance counted down the minutes. I finally understood my mother. I understood why she put the receipts away. The system closes in on you. The finances get cut. The friends are poisoned. The narrative is flipped. Eventually, walking away makes you look completely insane, and staying quiet makes you look like a saint. It was 2 in the morning. I was sitting on the carpeted floor of Ellie's nursery. My back rested against the wooden slats of her crib. The white noise machine hummed its artificial ocean waves. In the master bedroom down the hall, Tyler was sleeping peacefully. He snored lightly. It was the deep and untroubled sleep of a man who believed he had already won. I scrolled through the photo album on my phone. The screen cast a pale glow over my knees. I looked at our wedding pictures on the beach. I looked at a picture of Tyler weeping with joy in the delivery room when Ellie was born. Those moments were real, but the secret apartment was also real. The stolen money was real. I stopped on a selfie I took my first week returning to the hospital. I was wearing fresh blue scrubs. My hair was pulled back. I was exhausted, but my eyes held a spark of pride. I stared at that woman on the screen. I did not recognize her. The marriage had slowly eroded her away, until only a tired mother remained. Ellie shifted in her sleep above me. Her tiny hand reached out and gripped the edge of the crib bumper. I looked up at the ceiling. 15 years from now, Ellie will be a teenager. She might look at me one day and ask what I did when I found out the truth. What would my answer be? Would I tell her I put the receipts back in the drawer, just like her grandmother? Or would I tell her I was terrified? But I walked out the door anyway. The desire to crush Tyler evaporated. I did not need to destroy him to feel whole. I did not need him to admit he was wrong. I needed my daughter to witness a mother who valued her own life. I needed to break the chain. I set the phone face down on the carpet. I stood up in the dark nursery. My knees ached, and my shoulders were stiff. But for the very first time since the text message lit up the bedroom, I did not feel tired. I felt completely awake. The fluorescent lights in the hospital break room hummed a steady note. I sat in a molded plastic chair and dialed Gina Chen. My voice sounded completely different today. The frantic edge was gone. I spoke with the calm rhythm of a nurse managing a critical patient transfer. I told her I wanted Ellie safe. I wanted what was mine back. I wanted out clean. Gina paused and said that was the clearest version of me she had heard so far. We drafted the final plan. He needed to receive the petition in a public setting. I hung up and immediately dialed my mother. I told her I was filing. I wanted her to know she did not fail me. Heavy silence hung on the line. She whispered okay. For the very first time, her voice carried absolutely no fear. It was exactly 8:40 that night when I finalized everything in my kitchen. The overhead lights cast a bright glow over the granite island. Ellie was sitting in her wooden high chair. I kept her awake past her bedtime on purpose. Tyler could never drop his perfect father act while his daughter was watching. I arranged the objects on the counter. The silver Tiffany necklace sat curled on the cold stone. The brass key with the plastic tag reading Unit 4B lay right beside it. A printed copy of the residential lease was stacked next to 6 months of bank statements. A thick white legal folder rested at the center. My phone sat next to the folder. The screen was dark, but the call was active. Maren was on the other end. She was on mute. The state of Oregon allows one-party consent for audio recording. Maren was my silent witness. The front door opened. Tyler dropped his leather briefcase by the stairs. The faint scent of floral perfume drifted off his collar as he walked into the bright kitchen. He saw the table and stopped completely dead. I told him to sit down. He planted both hands firmly on the edge of the granite counter and asked what this was. I told him it was the necklace he claimed he lost at the gym. He took it to Tiffany and had it re-engraved from a T to a B. He gave it to Brooke. $400 from our joint account. Tyler stared at the silver chain. His eyes darted to my face. He started to say he did not know where I got those things. I pointed to the key. I told him it belonged to Unit 4B at Columbia Tower, the place where he had been renting an apartment for Brooke for 6 months. $1,850 a month. That money came directly from the savings account we built for a house. I told him I had seen his blue toothbrush sitting next to hers. Ellie dropped her plastic spoon onto the hardwood floor. She called out for her dada cheerfully. Tyler jerked his head toward his daughter. Her sweet voice echoed in the tense kitchen. She smiled brightly at him. Tyler froze. His jaw locked tight. He desperately wanted to turn it all around and make me the villain, but the physical evidence sat glowing under the lights, and his baby girl was watching him. The conflict paralyzed him. He sank into the wooden chair opposite me. He asked how long I had known. I told him longer than he thought. He leaned forward and shifted immediately into bargaining. He promised to end it with Brooke right now. I asked if he would end it like he ended it in college. She currently held a key to an apartment he paid for. He promised to go to therapy. I reminded him he offered couples therapy with his college buddy. He cancelled my credit card. He called my mother and told her I was mentally unstable. I paused and let the silence stretch. I told him he used my daughter as a weapon. He stayed completely silent. Nobody can spin a pattern. I pushed the thick white folder across the smooth granite. The papers were being filed tomorrow morning. A temporary custody order was attached. A dissipation claim for $23,000 was included. I told him he would be served at his office. His eyes hardened. He said he would fight me for Ellie. I tapped the dark screen of my phone. It lit up and displayed the active call timer. I told him I had a character witness listening to this conversation right now. Every single bargain and implicit admission of guilt was captured. He had absolutely no deniability left. His mouth opened, but he produced no sound. I stood up and lifted Ellie out of her high chair. I told him I would sleep with Marin tonight. I walked toward the front door. Tyler sat perfectly still while the silver necklace glittered mercilessly under the lights. Tyler received the legal documents the next morning at exactly 10:30. He was standing in the busy lobby of his technology startup during the morning coffee break. The receptionist was typing at the front desk. Two junior sales representatives were talking loudly by the espresso machine. A polite process server approached him. The man spoke loudly enough for the entire room to hear. He asked for Tyler Prescott and told him he had been served. He held out a large white legal envelope. The espresso machine abruptly stopped. A heavy silence fell over the lobby. It was the kind of quiet where everyone hears exactly what happened, but nobody looks directly at the center of the room. Tyler forced a broad performance smile onto his face. He grabbed the envelope with both hands, but then he folded the thick legal document tightly in half. Nobody folds legal papers in half unless they desperately want them to disappear. He walked straight to the parking garage. He sat inside his car and ripped open the envelope. He picked up his phone and called Brooke. On the third attempt, she finally answered. She spoke quickly. Her friend worked at his office. She just texted her what happened in the lobby. She told him to never call her again. The line went dead. Both of his carefully constructed worlds collapsed at the exact same second. My phone vibrated later that evening, while I was putting Ellie to sleep in the spare bedroom. It was my mother. Her voice sounded thin and shaky, but the words were incredibly clear. She told me she opened the drawer last night. The one with my father and his hotel receipts. They were still sitting right there from 1997. I closed my eyes and leaned against the painted wall. She made an appointment with a lawyer for tomorrow morning. She said I did what she could not do. She asked me to let her do it now. It was 30 years late, but it was today. Hot tears spilled over my eyelashes. By shattering the pattern for my daughter, I had somehow given my mother the permission to shatter it for herself. 3 weeks later, the early morning sun washed through the single window of my new apartment. It was a tiny studio space. 500 square feet, located on the second floor of an older building. A small round table sat in the kitchen corner, surrounded by two mismatched wooden chairs. I pinned a photograph to the refrigerator door. It was a selfie of Ellie and me at the public park yesterday. It was Saturday morning. Ellie sat on the cheap brown carpet playing with wooden blocks. I sat at the small kitchen table with my laptop open. I was updating my resume. The 18-month gap in my work history stared back at me, but Marin had given me the contact information for a specialized staffing agency for nurses. I looked around the small room. It was painfully empty. I did not see a fleece jacket hanging by the door. I did not smell unfamiliar cologne in the bathroom. It was perfectly and beautifully quiet. Ellie crawled across the floor and patted my bare feet. She held up a blue wooden block shaped like a star. She called out Mama and tried to say the word star. I scooped her up and settled her onto my lap. I thought about Tyler for a passing second. He would have weekend custody soon. I would have to learn how to let her go for 2 days every week. Buying your freedom meant you had to pay a heavy price. My phone buzzed on the wooden table. It was laying face up. A text message from Maren popped onto the display. She asked about brunch tomorrow. 3 weeks ago, I possessed absolutely nobody to text except my husband. Now the circle was small and brand new, but it belonged entirely to me. I set the phone down. Face up. I had absolutely nothing left to hide. I am 28 years old. I live in a cramped studio apartment. I have an 18-month-old daughter. My mother is filing for divorce 2 hours away. And for the very first time in 4 years, I am not tired. Sometimes the hardest part about walking away is not the fear of the unknown. It is the heartbreaking realization that the map you were handed by the women who came before you leads straight to a dead end. You watch your mother endure quiet disrespect. You grow up absorbing the silent lesson that a good woman is an accommodating woman. You learn that holding a family together requires sacrificing your own reality to maintain his comfort. But what happens when you look down at your own daughter and realize you are handing her the exact same map? The true lesson here is about recognizing the painful patterns we inherit and finding the incredible courage to finally break them. We tell ourselves we are staying for the children. But children do not just inherit our physical traits. They inherit our boundaries. They watch how we allow ourselves to be treated, and they use that as the baseline for their own future relationships. Leaving is never a perfect victory. It comes with the heavy cost of shared custody and starting over. But the price of staying and swallowing poison every single day is infinitely higher. Your exhaustion is real, but it should never be used as a weapon against you. Have you ever found yourself making excuses for a betrayal just to keep the peace in your home? What was the moment you finally realized you had to choose yourself over the illusion of a perfect family? Share your experiences in the comments below, because your story might be the exact mirror someone else needs to finally see the truth. The break room at the hospital smelled of stale coffee and industrial bleach. I sat in a hard plastic chair and dialed Gina Chen. My voice did not shake. The frantic need to win a war had completely evaporated. I sounded like a nurse managing a critical patient transfer. I do not want to destroy him, I told my lawyer. I want my daughter safe. I want what is mine back. And I want out clean. Gina paused. That is the clearest version of you I have heard so far, Riley. We finalized the plan. We would not serve him at home. He needed to receive the petition in public at his office with witnesses, so he could not twist the story later. We attached the dissipation claim for the $23,000. We filed for a temporary custody order. Maren agreed to stand as a character witness. I ended the call and dialed my mother. She answered on the second ring. "Mum, I am filing," I said. "I am not asking for permission. But I want you to know you did not fail me. You taught me exactly what I do not want Ellie to learn. And that is enough." A heavy silence hung on the line. Then she took a shaky breath. "Okay, honey," she whispered. For the first time in my life, her voice held absolutely no fear. It was 8:40 that night, when I arranged everything on the kitchen island. Ellie was sitting in her wooden high chair. I kept her awake past her bedtime on purpose. Tyler could never drop his perfect father act while his daughter was watching. She was the mirror he could not stand to look into when the truth came out. I set the objects on the granite counter under the bright pendant lights. The silver necklace from Tiffany sat curled on the stone. The brass key with the plastic unit 4B tag lay right next to it. A printed copy of the residential lease rested beside 6 months of bank statements. A thick, white, legal folder sat perfectly in the center. My phone lay next to the folder. The screen was dark, but the call was active. Maren was on the other end of the line on mute. Oregon allows one-party consent for audio recording, I had the legal right to capture every word spoken in my own kitchen. Maren was my silent witness. The front door opened. Tyler dropped his leather briefcase in the hallway. He told me he'd just got back from a mandatory team dinner. The faint scent of floral perfume drifted off his collar as he walked into the kitchen. He saw the table. He stopped completely dead. "Sit down, Tyler," I said. He did not pull out a chair. He planted both hands firmly on the edge of the granite counter and leaned forward. "What is this?" "This is the necklace you told me you lost at the gym," I said. "Except, you did not lose it. You took it back and had it re-engraved from a T to a B. You gave it to Brooke, $400 from our joint account on December 14th. The statement is right here." Tyler stared at the silver chain. His eyes darted to my face. "Riley, I do not know where you got. This is the key to Unit 4B at Columbia Tower," I interrupted. "The place where you have been renting a studio apartment for Brooke for 6 months. $1,850 a month. That money came directly from the savings account we built for a house. I have been inside Tyler. I have seen your blue toothbrush sitting right next to hers." Ellie dropped her plastic spoon onto the hardwood floor. "Dada," she babbled happily. Tyler jerked his head toward his daughter. Her sweet voice echoed in the room. She smiled brightly at him. Tyler froze. His jaw locked tight. He desperately wanted to yell at me. He wanted to accuse me of breaking and entering, but the physical evidence sat glowing under the lights, and his baby girl was watching him call her Dada. His image as the loving protector collided with his need to deny the truth. He sank into the wooden chair opposite me. His knees hit the wood with a heavy thud. "How long have you known?" he asked quietly. "Longer than you think." He leaned forward and immediately started bargaining. "Riley, we can fix this. I will end it with Brooke. Today. Right now, I will call her. You will end it. Like you ended it in college. She has been your former girlfriend for 9 years, Tyler. She currently has a key to an apartment you pay for. I will go to therapy. I will do whatever. You offered couples therapy with your college buddy as the therapist. You cancelled my credit card. You called my mother and told her I was mentally unstable. I paused and let the silence stretch. You used my daughter as a weapon." He stayed completely silent. I did not name a single incident. I named a calculated pattern. Nobody can spin a pattern. I pushed the thick white folder across the smooth granite. Gina Chen. The papers are being filed tomorrow morning. A temporary custody order is attached. A dissipation claim for $23,000 is included. You will be served at your office. His eyes hardened. "If you do this, I will fight you for Ellie." "I know," I replied. "And I have 6 months of bank statements. I have 200 screenshots. I have the key to the apartment you furnished using our daughter and her college fund." I reached out and tapped the dark screen of my phone. It lit up and displayed the active call timer. I also have a character witness who is a senior intensive care nurse, listening to this entire conversation right now. Tyler stared at the glowing numbers. 8 minutes and 43 seconds. He realized every single bargain he just offered was captured. His mouth opened, but he produced no sound. I stood up and lifted Ellie out of her high chair. I kissed the warm top of her head. "I will sleep at Maren and her place tonight. I will pick up Ellie and her things tomorrow." I walked toward the front door. Ellie looked over my shoulder and waved her tiny hand. Tyler sat perfectly still while the silver necklace glittered mercilessly under the lights. I found out later exactly how the next morning played out. Tyler received the legal documents at exactly 10:30. He was not standing in a private office. He was standing in the busy lobby of his technology startup during the morning coffee break. The receptionist was typing at the front desk. 2 junior sales representatives were talking loudly by the espresso machine. An important client was sitting on the leather sofa. A polite process server approached him. The man spoke loudly enough for the entire room to hear. He asked for Tyler Prescott and told him he had been served. He held out a large, white legal envelope. the grinding noise of the espresso machine abruptly stopped. One of the sales representatives left his hand hovering frozen over the buttons. A heavy and suffocating silence fell over the lobby. Tyler forced a broad performance smile onto his face. He thanked the man casually and grabbed the envelope with both hands. But then he folded the thick legal document tightly in half. Nobody folds legal papers in half unless they desperately want them to disappear. He walked straight to the concrete parking garage. He sat inside his car and ripped open the envelope. He saw the dissipation claim for $23,000. He saw the request for temporary primary custody. He picked up his phone and called Brooke. On the third attempt, she finally answered. She spoke quickly. She told him her friend worked at his office and had just texted her what happened in the lobby. She told him to never call her again. The line went dead. Tyler sat entirely alone in the driver's seat. Both of his carefully constructed worlds collapsed at the exact same second. My phone vibrated later that evening while I was putting Ellie to sleep in the spare bedroom at Marin and her house. It was my mother. Her voice sounded thin and shaky, but the words were incredibly clear. "I opened the drawer last night, Riley," she said. "The one with your father and his hotel receipts. They are still sitting right there. 1997. I closed my eyes and leaned against the painted wall. "I made an appointment," she continued, "with a lawyer in Eugene for tomorrow morning." "Mom," I breathed out. "You did what I could not do. Let me do it now. It is 30 years late, but it is today." Hot tears spilled over my eyelashes and ran down my cheeks. I did not cry because of Tyler. I cried for my mother. The generational loop did not just break in one direction. By shattering the pattern for my daughter, I had somehow given my mother the permission to shatter it for herself. 3 weeks later, the early morning sun washed through the single window of my new apartment. It was a tiny studio space, 500 square feet, located on the second floor of an older building. A large maple tree outside was just starting to turn orange and drop its autumn leaves. I had a narrow twin bed pushed against one wall, and the crib Marin loaned me pushed against the other. A small round table sat in the kitchen corner, surrounded by 2 mismatched wooden chairs. I pinned a photograph to the refrigerator door. It was a selfie of Ellie and me at the public park yesterday. The sun was shining brightly, and we were both smiling. It was Saturday morning. Ellie sat on the cheap brown carpet playing with wooden blocks. She stacked them up into clumsy towers and knocked them down while giggling. I sat at the small kitchen table with my laptop open. I was updating my resume. The 18-month gap in my work history stared back at me, but Marin had given me the contact information for a specialized staffing agency for nurses. They offered highly flexible shifts and paid a better hourly rate than the hospital. I looked around the small room. It was painfully empty. I did not see a fleece jacket hanging by the door. I did not smell unfamiliar cologne in the bathroom. I did not have to read a fake sticky note carefully centered on the kitchen counter. I did not have to listen to off-key singing in the shower while a secret message glowed in the dark. It was perfectly and beautifully quiet. Ellie crawled across the floor and patted my bare feet. She held up a blue wooden block shaped like a star. I scooped her up and settled her onto my lap. She felt heavier today. She was growing so fast. She had my brown eyes and a wide, bright smile. I thought about Tyler for a passing second. He would have weekend custody soon. Gina was still negotiating the final terms. He would get Ellie for 2 days every week. I would have to learn how to let her go for those 2 days. The quiet ache in my chest reminded me of the cost. Buying your freedom meant you had to pay a heavy price. My phone buzzed on the wooden table. It was laying face up. The screen glowed brightly for absolutely anyone to see. A text message from Marin popped onto the display. "Brunch tomorrow, my treat. Bring the nugget." 3 weeks ago, I possessed absolutely nobody to text except my husband. Now I had Marin. I had Gina. I had my mother, who was currently staying with my aunt in Eugene while her own paperwork moved through the courts. I had a small network of intensive care nurses who donated baby clothes and wooden toys. The circle was small and it was brand new. but it belonged entirely to me. I typed a quick reply. We will be there. 10 in the morning, I set the phone down. Face up, I had absolutely nothing left to hide. Ellie smacked the wooden star against the edge of the table. Ta. I smiled and kissed her warm cheek. Yeah, baby. Star. Sunlight pooled across the tabletop. Scattered pieces of dry oat cereal littered the carpet around my chair. It was a Saturday morning with my daughter and a messy floor. It looked exactly like my old kitchen, but this time my name was on the residential lease. I knew the exact password to my bank account. I was sitting here because I actively chose to be here. I was not left behind in the dark shadows of someone else and their life. I am 28 years old. I live in a cramped studio apartment. I have an 18-month-old daughter. I have a gap on my resume. I have student loans. My mother is filing for divorce 2 hours away. My soon-to-be former husband is paying his lawyers with money he stole from our child. And for the very first time in 4 years, I am not tired. Sometimes the hardest part about walking away is realizing the survival map handed down by the women before you leads straight to a dead end. You grow up watching your mother endure quiet disrespect, absorbing the silent lesson that keeping a family together requires swallowing your own reality. We tell ourselves we are staying for the children, but children do not just inherit our physical traits. They inherit our boundaries. They watch what we accept and use it as the baseline for their own future. Leaving is never a perfect victory. It comes with the heavy cost of shared custody, cramped apartments, and terrifying uncertainty. But the price of staying and drinking poison every single day to maintain an illusion is infinitely higher. You are not crazy for noticing the details that do not add up, and your exhaustion should never be used as a weapon against you. Have you ever found yourself making excuses for a betrayal just to keep the peace in your home? What was the moment you finally realized you had to choose yourself over the picture-perfect image? Share your experiences in the comments below, because your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.